Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Welcome to our live, inshallah ta'ala. Today we are going to be discussing with the author, mashallah tabarakallah, we have right here with us Kashif Khan, and this book, The DNA Way, right? And anybody who has been on my page, my Facebook, and recently I released my own book, No One Taught Me This. It's all about parenting. It's all about getting your parenting right. It's all about prioritizing your health, your life, so that you can be the present available parent for your children. And once I started reading this book, and a shout out to Dr. Madiha who introduced Kashif through her life. I did not know about this wonderful book, your wonderful work, before that live. But mashallah, once I heard that live, I got this book instantly, and alhamdulillah, I've been reading it. I have notes. I have highlighted. If you, I hope you don't mind, Kashif, but I have like mark the pages, mark the lines, write note. I've written notes with my pencil. I've really delved into that book, like full focus, because I loved your work. Jazakallahu khair. So now, for the audiences to understand, Kashif, can you please introduce yourself?
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I think you did an amazing job already, so I'll try and follow up with that. The purpose of the book was, first of all, I don't come from the space. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a clinician. I was sick. So I was in the PR and marketing business. I used to help startup companies grow. I was really good at it. I would take an idea, some team, help them develop their business, help them find funding, help them, get from zero to some level of success. And I got really sick. So at the age of 38, had eczema really bad. I couldn't open my left eye. It was like sealed shut. I had psoriasis where my knuckles were always bleeding. In really intense migraines. I had to leave work for days at a time. Gut issues, depression, it all came at one time. So what started the journey was me asking doctors, like, why is this happening? It didn't make sense to me. I've never been sick. All my life was, but then all of a sudden, all these things all at once. Why? Right?
Mm-hmm.
So I couldn't get that answer, and I kept getting, well, you have this, and here's the pill you need, and you have this, and here's the other pill you need. And I said, no, there's something wrong here. I must have done something wrong. So I dug in, and there's many layers. Functional medicine, integrated medicine, coaching, like the work that you do, for example. And eventually, I learned that my genetic code had some problems.
Right.
There were some pieces completely broken and missing that other people didn't have a problem with. And so some environmental factors, some food factors that were not a problem for other people were a major problem for me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right. And so the intention was to literally tell you that story, everything that I went through, everything that I did, why I no longer have those problems. It's been a few years now, and I don't have any of those problems I described. So I've learned that chronic disease is a choice.
Yeah.
If you understand why it happens, and if you deal with the why as opposed to the disease itself, you don't need to have it.
Alhamdulillah, mashallah, tabarakallah. And for the audience to understand, you run a company that you came about, and you studied from the best people in the field. You attended conferences. You really dwell deep into understanding how a human being can live their best life, like in Islam. So my coaching comes with this idea that Islam in itself is a complete religion, but how to implement the prophetic and the Quranic understanding with science, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in your book, it's so evident what you've shown people to do, what you've made people understand. At least that's the message that I got, is that alhamdulillah, we can live our best life. We can live the life of excellence. We can give our body the haqq, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has gifted us this life, right? It's something of a trust, and we're going to go back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's why I am so passionate about making people understand that just because a diagnosis is given, just because we're feeling down, anxiety, for example. So
Mhm.
when I talk to a lot of my clients, are women clients, in a specific age bracket, and they go through, and they've been chronically depressed, they go through so much stress, they or their husbands go through, and they do not understand. And so with this, I want to tell people that what you have cracked down is like, okay, fine, some people don't want to go to don't want to go to therapist, although you do say please go to therapist, do take medicine. You say that you're not anti-medicine medication, but you tell people how to take care of themselves through exercise, through the kinds of food, and what type of genes, and what type of gene deletion, and what type of like, there's this whole new understanding. And I was like, oh my god, people need to read this book. They really need to get their hands on this book. Do you have a podcast about this book? Do you talk about it?
So we do have a podcast, not based on the book, but just ongoing, exactly all of what you said. How do we unpack everything from breast cancer to autism to fibromyalgia to depression? Why do those things happen? Not what are they called? And
Yes.
as opposed to I have breast cancer, I have to manage it. Like, let's figure out what went wrong in the body and
Yeah.
deal with that. And by the way, if I can take a genetic test of a 5-year-old girl, I can predict that. You don't need to wait and see, right? You don't need to wait to, here's my problem, now deal with it. No, here's what we see coming in the future, right?
Yes.
You know, and sort of the spiritual religious aspect of it is you're born with this gift of good health.
Hmm.
And I think one of the measures of, how successful you are in Dean is what condition are you returning this body in,
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
What did you eat? What did you expose yourself to? Well, religion is about making choices, right? That's what
Mhm.
we're doing. Though that's the challenge. What choice you're going to make in every given circumstance. So, what choice you're going to make when there's a piece of cake on the table, right?
Eat it.
Yeah, usually it's to eat it, right? Now to understand that that piece of cake, when you feed it to your kid, who maybe genetically doesn't have a good insulin response, we can predict that. Or maybe does not metabolize starch as well. We can predict that. This is why 3 kids in the room have 3 different responses. One will eat the cake and ice cream and have no problem. The other one is sitting on the couch, can't move after an hour because you just gave him a crazy insulin response because genetically he can't cope. The
Yeah.
same thing is true with fats. The same thing is true with vegan foods. Deciding to become vegetarian, are you actually genetically wired to do that? The enzymes that are required to break down those foods, etc. So, any choice you need to make: how do I sleep? How do I eat? How do I exercise? My mom had Alzheimer's. I don't want it. You don't
Yes.
have to have it. You have to understand what caused it. So, our DNA tells us all of that. You just have to read the manual, and it tells you what to do.
Oh, Mubarak, for your work, because right now when I just open, and there are these tips that you've given in this gray shaded areas, what to eat, what kind of supplements, what kind of lifestyle, what are the behaviors to avoid. um yesterday night I put on a funny WhatsApp status. I'm just going to read it for the sake of a laugh.
Yeah.
I said, can you grow, please? The bank account says no, the lawn says no, the hair says no, the muscle says no, the stomach says I got you. So midlife crisis, things happening, but in so I as a parent of 3 children, I know that from the very beginning my eldest has had eczema issues. My middle one, now that she's in her teens, her eczema issues are flaring up, like flaring up, and I get so scared. She was recently diagnosed with IBS, and I'm so scared for her health and all
Yeah.
of that. And I was reading in the very beginning, you talk about, I mean, you talk about your genetic testing and all of that from the get-go, right? And the whole book is based, you made yourself the model, and then you talk about everything. And that's really, number one, that's very brave. Number two, that's excellent, because you are in it so people can see like this person is really vested into this. And mashallah tabarakallah, people, please get the podcast, please read the book, please go to the website. All of the links are given, but alhamdulillah. And then you talk about your niece.
Yeah.
She was the same age when the in the pandemic, when she gets sick, and how you helped her understand what was happening with her. Then you talk about the athletes, why they were not able to perform. And it's so eye-opening, because as parents, we push our children to do certain things because we know they can do it, but can they really do it?
Yeah, what are they wired for? Yeah, and that's so give you an example of when you talk about your daughter, so there's eczema and there's IBS.
Yes.
Both of those things are inflammation. And
Yes.
right now, I mean, I can speak from the American context. 14 of the 15 top killers that people die from are all rooted in the exact same thing, inflammation.
Yeah,
Right?
inflammation.
So
Yeah.
whether it's cancer, Alzheimer's, diabetes, cardiovascular, the top killers, they're all the same thing. They're inflammation. Why
Yeah.
do they manifest as different problems? Because genetically you have different quality hardware. Some
Hmm.
people have really good quality cardiovascular hardware, so that's not the thing that's going to trigger. Some
Hmm.
people have really bad, brain tissue, and so they're going to get more amyloid plaque. They're going to get dementia quicker. So,
Yeah.
but it's all rooted in inflammation. So, same thing with your daughter. Then you have to understand, well, why is there inflammation? That's really the most important question to ask.
Hmm.
And genetically, there's certain jobs that our body does,
Hmm.
and a lot of those have to do with removing toxins, fighting the inflammation, creating neurochemicals, creating hormones. And you can start to predict that if my body doesn't do this job well, for example, there's a gene called GSTT1, right?
Hmm.
Which is kind of goes through your bloodstream and looks for toxins. And
Okay.
when it finds them, sends them to the liver to get them out of your body.
Right.
It's possible to be missing that gene.
Right.
Forget about what version or what quality, you might not even have it. And
Wow.
if you don't even have it and you live in a big city and you're breathing in pesticides from your grass and you have cleaning chemicals on your furniture and you have dry cleaning and you have a mattress that has chemicals in it and then you go outside in the pollution, all of that stuff is in your bloodstream causing inflammation. So
Oh,
you may have come from an ancestry where you didn't need that gene, right?
right.
Think about living in Kashmir 200 years ago. You don't need that, right?
Yeah.
Now, fast forward to New York today, yeah, you need it. So that's the person for who all of a sudden they start using words like anxiety, eczema, IBS, etc., 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 because they're suffering from inflammation. Now, what do? We start masking each of those diseases. Here's your IBS pill. Here's your eczema cream. Here's
Yeah.
your anxiety pill.
Does not help in the long term.
No, you're just suppressing it and it's going to pop up somewhere else. You're going to cause another problem.
Yes.
Or let's dig deeper and see why is the body inflamed? And it's not the same reason for all of us.
Hmm.
And you
Hmm.
mentioned my niece, so that's a really good example to sort of paint a full picture. And the big reason why the book was written because her story took us from we were a research company. So again, at the beginning I said that I wasn't from this industry. I
Right.
found the science, changed my life. I funded the research. There was no intention to write a book or sell tests to the consumers. It was more like, hey, we have
Thank you, you
science.
did. Thank you that you did all the work that you did. May Allah bless you for it. Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, so the intention then was how do we partner with hospitals and clinics? We were thinking like a healthcare company. Then my niece's episode happened. I realized, wow, every young kid, every woman needs this.
Oh yeah.
And by the way, female health is the part that I think needs the most fixing. It's completely broken, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So what happened? She had an anxiety attack,
Hmm.
right? And she collapsed to the ground. Nothing happened in that time. I called a friend who's a pediatrician, and he said it sounds like it's over, right? Like she's
Hmm.
breathing, everything's normal. If
Hmm.
it happens again, let us know.
Hmm. Hmm.
So about a month later, my sister and my mom called me. They all live together, and they said, "Oh, it happened again, but this time you got to take her to the hospital because she fell down and hurt her leg. She like literally passed out."
Hmm.
I took her to this clinic, and 6, 7 hours. The end result was, if it happens again, let us know.
Yeah.
Right? And I knew what that meant. That meant if it happens again, we're diagnosing her with the anxiety problem, and
Hmm.
here's the pill she has to take, and probably for the rest of her life.
Yeah.
So it did happen again.
Hmm.
At that time, my mom woke up to a note that said, I can't take it anymore. I'm leaving home. She left. She was 13.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, given our culture, given our background, that's a big move, right? It's
Yes.
not normal. We can, like, same conservative, innocent culture that we all would think does not add up.
Mm-hmm.
So I went over there and she was literally standing down the street outside, not knowing what to do, right?
Yeah.
And so I pulled, and that was the first day I realized, like, wait a second, why am I accepting this word anxiety? Why am I calling the doctor? I have her DNA.
Mm-hmm.
Why am I
Mm-hmm.
not checking? Because remember, we were still a research company at that time, so I wasn't thinking about how this applies to words like anxiety, depression. I was thinking more like study the body.
Yeah.
So I opened her profile and I found that her hormones are really imbalanced. The way she makes hormones are
Yeah.
not the middle ground they should be. It's more like this,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And then I realized that the phone calls and text messages I was getting were like clockwork every 28 to 30 days,
Uh, yes.
right when her cycle was starting,
Yes.
right? Which is already the time when you have the least possible hormones. You
Mhm.
just finished getting rid of everything. She had a bigger dip, went way lower because of her imbalance. So that was one. Then, well, why did it happen at this time? Because this wasn't her first cycle, it had been going on for a while. This happened during COVID,
Mhm.
during the lockdowns. We are in Toronto, where we had some of the worst lockdowns in the world.
Yeah.
In winter, she
Mhm.
hadn't been outside in like 5 months.
Yeah.
So she had zero vitamin D exposure.
Absolutely.
Vitamin D is a very important micronutrient. You have 24,000 genes that make up your body, your genome. 2,000, 10%
Mhm.
require the right amount of vitamin D to express properly. So
Right.
10% of your human biochemistry is dependent on this one thing to be at the right level. Now,
Mhm.
the way your genes deal with vitamin D, there's one gene that takes the vitamin D from the sun, converts it into D3, puts it in your blood. She had the
Right.
bad version of that gene.
Yeah.
There's another gene that then takes the vitamin D and transports it to the cell. She had the bad version of that gene.
Right.
There's another gene that then connects it and binds it to the cell. She had the bad version of that gene. So she
That's
was getting
awesome.
zero and
Yeah.
she didn't use it properly, right? So
Right.
now combine that with the hormones, there's even a bigger crash.
Right.
Now, why did it equal? If you remember, I said earlier, there has to be some hardware problem. So her
Yes.
hardware problem, why did it equal anxiety and not something else?
Right.
Her hardware problem is there's a chemical called dopamine,
Yes.
and dopamine allows you to experience pleasure,
Mhm.
satisfaction.
Mhm.
There's a receptor in your brain that the dopamine connects to, and that's how you feel it.
Right.
The genetics of her receptors is that it's very low.
Right.
So very hard for her to connect dopamine and feel pleasure.
Yeah.
Also, the clearance is very fast. So
Right.
once she's finished with that, I ate some tasty food, I'm done with pleasure, it's gone very quickly. It doesn't last that long.
Yes.
So she doesn't experience pleasure like a normal person anyway. So this combination equal a crazy anxiety response. Now, what would have been, here's your anxiety prescription, which she probably still would have been on today, instead became, here's high dose vitamin D.
Yes.
And by the way, we need to give you 2 or 3 doses because you don't transport it and bind it. So if I give it to you in the morning, that's not enough. I need to give it to you 2 or 3 times.
Mhm.
And something called L-theanine. L-theanine is a supplement that boosts dopamine levels and makes you
Right.
feel happy, right?
Right.
In a
Right.
very healthy, clean way. The way
Right.
the body does it already, it just gives you
Yeah.
more of the same.
Yeah.
From that day, 2 years ago, this problem has never happened again.
Allahumma barik, mashallah, mashallah. And
Right.
how you have just explained it. People, if you're listening, alhamdulillah, if you're listening it later, get the book. It's equally simply explained, mashallah. Tabarakallah. When I was reading, I was like, alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. Like, as a parent, I understand that when something goes wrong, and you know what's different. Okay, so people, I want to make this more clear. Maybe I have not still yet. Of course, it's very obvious. I'm a fan of this book. I'm a fan of Kashif right now. MashaAllah, tabarakallah. He's done an awesome job. May Allah accept your work. Ameen, ameen, ameen. And may it be a sadaqah jariyah for you for generations to come. Ameen. But what I want you all to understand is what this book has done for me. It has made me realize, because we come from a blame shame kind of a mentality, and this is not just the Eastern culture or Muslim culture, this is the whole entire world, right? What is wrong with you? What is wrong with you? Why aren't you trying? This book explains that sometimes it's not just about being motivated to do something. Sometimes, like he just now said, that may be a hardware problem, and we do not have any idea when that started or where it has been since birth, and then it might just trigger. It might
Mhm.
just trigger. For example, my allergies, they just triggered. I clearly remember I've had allergies since childhood, but the outdoor allergies to certain types of plants, it just triggered in my early 30s. right? In my
Mhm.
early 30s. And now I can hardly go outside without feeling the itchiness and everything, and it just gets so flared up. And it was not there in my teens, it was not there in my 20s, but now in my 30s and 40s I'm like, astaghfirullah, I can't even enjoy outdoors. What's wrong with me? So when you use these terms as hardware, when you use these terms as the gene might not be functioning properly, or it might not even be there, the
Mhm.
example that you just gave, like if you were 200 years ago, the ancestors in Kashmir did not need to get toxins released, right?
Yeah.
Now we in New York, we do need that. That is why I'm just repeating whatever you said, but I'm just trying to make people understand that how simplistically, but with facts, you have explained these things in this book, and why this book is so important for parents to read,
Mm.
how it's going to open doors to becoming kind to our own self and to our children. Because one of the things that anxiety does, or what one of the things that overthinking or these cognitive distortions do, and again, you have linked that also with the type of genes people have, and with the type of processes people think, and how the the vitamins and the minerals are not happening, or happening inside the body taking care of our stuff. And people just want to blame something.
Yeah.
But then you say, but then you say something very nice. You know what he does in the people, what he does in this book is, first he tells you, okay, there might be a hardware malfunction, there might be a hardware problem, but then he says, fear not, don't fear, okay, I'm going to give you tips of how to, I'm going to give you the names of the supplements, I'm going to give you the names of the foods, I'm going to give you a routine sort of a type that you can actually adapt to, so that you can have a better life, a better quality of life. And that's what I love about this. Anything else that you would like to add? Your company, what does your company do, and how to get in touch with them, and what's the procedure, and how long it takes? And of course, a few success stories, because you have mentioned a few athlete success stories, especially when in your Dr. Media's life, about your friend who had that cholesterol problem. You've
Yeah.
discussed that in the book as well. So something more about the company, how you help, how this company helps, why should people get in touch?
Yeah, so we didn't intend, again, we were a research company. I was funding the research to make sure that healthcare would change. But what ended up happening is all these people like, we need the test, we need the test, we need the test. So we became a testing company. And now we have people all over the world ordering testing. I'm literally tonight flying to England to meet some people from Dubai who want to bring it into the Middle East, and like they have diabetes problems and cardiovascular problems. And
Yeah.
so the testing works like this: you spit in a tube, it's a saliva sample, right?
Hmm.
From there, we extract the DNA and we sequence it. So that means we're kind of reading your human instruction manual. And the
Hmm.
way we sequence, by the way, is very different than a typical genetic company. A genetic company usually tells you, here's what genes you have,
Hmm.
and those genes mean 80% chance of Alzheimer's, 60% chance of breast cancer. What am I going to do with that information
Mhm.
other than have more anxiety?
Mhm,
And
mhm,
now
mhm.
I have Alzheimer's to look forward to. What we say is that that's
Yeah.
not how you need to understand genetics. What we need to know is, forget about the problems. I need to know this gene does this job. This gene does this job. And if I start to look at how the jobs are interconnected, I already know what problems can come out of that, right?
Mhm.
And I'm going to give you an example after I finish telling you about the testing.
Yeah, sure.
So after the results come in, you log into this portal and you see seven major sections.
Mhm,
So mood and behavior, everything about your brain. If I have your DNA, I don't need to talk to you to understand your personality to a T. I know
yes.
everything about the way you behave,
Yeah,
why you procrastinate, are you more irritable, are you
yeah.
prone towards addiction, these types of things. It's all driven by your DNA. So everything about your brain so that you understand how you think, right? Then everything about diet and nutrition. So how you deal with certain micronutrients, fats, carbs. What should your meal planning look like for you as an individual to keep you at your healthiest?
Yeah.
Then we look at hormones, so important for women.
Yes.
Everything around infertility, fibromyalgia, endometriosis, bad menstrual cycle, menopause, all of
The
that
mood
stuff.
swings.
Sorry?
The mood swings.
Yeah,
The
the mood, all of that stuff,
Yeah.
we're told, yeah, it's hormones. You're supposed to feel bad. You're a woman. It's not
Mhm.
true.
Mm-hmm.
What's true is that yes, those swings are there if you don't understand how you're wired and you have the wrong habits. If you're eating the wrong foods, if you're exercising the wrong way, we are designed to do certain things. If you don't do that, you're not going to feel right. Right.
Yeah.
So those problems that women talk about so much don't need to happen.
Right.
Everything around chronic disease, so cardiovascular, diabetes, Alzheimer's, why would you have propensity towards those things? And then how do we stop it and make sure it doesn't happen?
Yeah.
Sleep. How many people are struggling with sleep problems?
Yeah.
Right? I can't fall asleep. I can't stay asleep. I slept, but I don't feel like I got rest. Those are
Yes.
different things genetically, and we break them all down.
Yeah.
And then we look at longevity. So, how do we take all of this and reinterpret it to extend your lifespan? If the habits you have right now would have got you to 65, let's get you to 90,
Right.
right? Longevity. And we're not saying we're playing against any natural or God-given right. Where you're supposed to tie your camel, right? and
Yes.
you're supposed to
Absolutely.
do
Have
the
to
work,
one do the work. Yes.
right? And
Exactly.
if you
Yes.
don't know, if you never ask what question, yeah, then you're probably going to have a bad result if you
Yeah.
don't ask what work you're supposed to do, right?
Yeah.
So you can change the trajectory of not only how long you potentially could live, but what are the quality of those years. Are
Absolutely.
you playing with your grandchildren, or are you in a bed watching them, right?
Yeah.
So those are the big areas we look at. And then going back to what you said about genetics, and so let me give you a perfect example. So a lot of people listening have probably heard of something called the BRCA gene. A lot of women are told to go get tested for the BRCA gene because it points to breast cancer risk.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the most spoken of. Angelina
Mm-hmm.
Jolie got a surgery done because she
Mm-hmm.
had the BRCA gene, right?
Okay.
She
Mm-hmm.
actually cut a part of herself off because she thought she had breast cancer risk.
Right.
That's genetics.
Right.
We don't do that. I don't believe that that's the way that it should be done. What we
Right.
do is called functional genomics. How do I take that and build an action plan?
Right.
So genetics is you have the BRCA gene, go cut something off.
No.
Functional genomics is what does the BRCA gene do? What job does it do? It doesn't cause cancer. It's a tumor suppressor.
Mm-hmm.
So, God forbid you get cancer, it's supposed to fix it.
Yeah.
And if you
Yeah.
have the bad version of BRCA, you don't do a good job of fixing,
Right.
which
Right.
means you're more likely to die from cancer, not that you're going to get it. So we
Right.
still didn't figure out why did you get it,
Right. Right.
right?
Yeah.
So now let's speak about that, which is much more useful information than you have a risk of breast cancer. Good luck.
Yeah.
So some women in their hormone profile make more estrogen. They're
Right.
called estrogen dominant, and it's very easy to predict genetically how you make your hormones. So some women just make a lot more estrogen. Step one of three. Step two is when you make your estrogen, you clear it in a monthly cycle, but you first convert it into something else. And there's three options: 2, 4, and 16 hydroxyestrogen. That's what they're called. 2
Okay.
is healthy, clean stuff. 4
Mm-hmm.
and 16 are very toxic.
Okay.
Right? Some women make these two. So now you might be estrogen dominant. I make a lot of estrogen, and I'm also estrogen toxic. I turn it into something that causes inflammation, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now, step three of three is we need to now look at the detox pathways. There's very specific genes that detoxify that toxin,
Okay.
right? They get rid of it for you. You might not be doing a good job there. So
Yeah.
now, if you are the woman that is estrogen toxic, estrogen dominant, estrogen toxic, and not detoxifying well, there's a risk for
Right.
causing the breast cancer,
Right.
right? But we
Right.
still have to ask more questions, which is now, what are the habits that would get me there? What
Right.
are the things that if I do, I won't have it, and if I don't do, I will have it? So some women take hormone therapy, adding more estrogen, and they don't realize it. Some women don't understand that their Teflon coated frying pan is
Yes.
a hormone mimic that when
Mm-hmm.
your body takes in those chemicals, treats it as estrogen. Some women don't understand that their cosmetics, makeup, have estrogen mimics in them. And I'm not saying don't use cosmetics. You have to find the clean, organic brands,
You
right?
can't say that. People will cancel you.
Okay. I already know. That's why I jumped in there, right? Sunscreen. How many sunscreens have forever chemicals? So all I'm saying is every choice you make to understand, don't take for granted that it's on the shelf, it's safe, right? There's good stuff and there's bad stuff. Both are for sale, especially if you're in the United States where things are
Yeah.
very loose. So
Yes.
now, if you're adding those things which means more estrogen, which means more estrogen toxins. Well, your body is intelligent
Mm.
and it wants to protect your organs and your veins from inflammation. So it
Mm-hmm.
takes those toxins and
Mm-hmm.
it stores it in fat to
Mm.
keep it away and make you safe. So where do women have fat? And then you wonder why this inflammation causes breast cancer,
Yeah.
right? So now you have the why. You have a very clear why.
Mm-hmm.
Now I can go, like we said earlier, test a 5-year-old girl
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and tell her, here's your genetic profile. If these are the choices you make, you're not getting sick. If
Yeah.
these are the choices you make, it's almost guaranteed you're getting sick. And you've given someone a roadmap, like a GPS, to find their way that's very clear and precise, as opposed to genetics, 80% chance of breast cancer, good luck.
Yeah.
Right? That's not useful to me. So, anyways, that's what we do. And we lay it out for all of the systems of the body and how they work. And then you can very easily on your own keep going back to that information for every question you need to ask. I'm deciding to exercise. What should I do? Oh, I need to lose 10 pounds. Why am I stuck? Right?
Mm-hmm.
It may
Mm-hmm.
not be a calorie thing. It could be the same thing I just said. If your body doesn't detoxify, your body may be storing fat just to
Yeah.
put the toxin somewhere, right? And that might be your problem, and you don't even know. So that's how we break things down. It becomes very easy to use, which was important for me because I didn't come from the industry, so I needed it to be easy. So I made it the way I wished it was when I first found it, right?
Yeah, mashallah. You did a fantastic job. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless your work and may it reach everybody around the world and may people understand and utilize and be benefited from it. My one question is, for example, so a person is diagnosed, and you said this whole thing, it helps people with autism, it helps people with whatever genetic issues they might have, behavioral issues. You talk a lot about mood, and I love that in the book. You talk about anxiety, you talk about addiction, you talk about procrastination, you talk about stress, you talk about how to deal with it. You just don't say, okay, fine, only the test is going to help you, and then we are going to figure out what supplements to give you. You just give out all the information. For somebody who does not want to go through the test route but needs the help, they get the help in this book. They absolutely get the help in this book. But for example, somebody has been going through a certain like for example, I'm diabetic and I've been going through with it for 7 years. I've not taken much care of myself. I'm being very honest. I did not take medication in the beginning. I did not change my lifestyle. I did not. So what if I come to you and I say, give me a plan. I need, and now I'm serious about my health. I want to get
Yeah.
better. So where do we start?
So there's two layers to that. The testing itself gives you a plan. The testing will tell you here's where you need to focus, and
Hmm.
here's exactly the supplements, the food, the habits, the things you need to remove, right? But we also have a team of clinicians that have been trained to interpret genomics. So some people, if it's a clinical problem like yourself,
Hmm.
diabetic,
Hmm.
we can reverse that.
Yes. Yeah.
You don't need
I
to be
wanted
diabetic,
people to hear this. Yep. Okay.
right? So we've over and over and over again, we've taken people off of cholesterol pills so many times,
Yes.
right? We've taken people that can't work because they're depressed and suicidal and they're thriving,
Yes.
right? So anything that's chronic in nature, meaning that you weren't born with it.
Mhm,
There's
mhm.
certain conditions that you're born with. You have it.
Yeah,
We don't deal with that, right?
yeah,
That it's innate. You have it. You probably need medication for that.
right.
Most of what we deal with, the majority of today's healthcare problems are chronic, meaning that we develop them over time, means we cause them.
Yes, because of the food, because of the environment, because of the toxins, like you said in the very beginning, we
Yeah.
caused them. The child was not born with that. The child was not born with being obese. They were normal weight, they were fine, everything was fine with them. They later on become obese.
Yep. And just like, so you mentioned autism, that's a perfect example.
Mm.
So, how many times have we heard this argument over the early childhood vaccines, right?
Yes.
And whether they cause autism.
Hmm.
So, the pharma companies are right that when you test the drugs, they don't cause any problems.
Hmm. Hmm.
But the parents are also right that that's when my kid changed.
Yes. Mm.
The day after, they were never the same. So, what's going
Mhm.
on? Right?
Yeah.
So what's going on is when you have clinical tests on the active molecule, you're
Mm.
testing this molecule to see if it's safe, and it probably is safe.
Right.
But when you provide the actual injection, there's heavy metals in that injection. Some kids don't have the genetic detox capacity to get rid of those heavy metals. Some kids don't have what's called a methylation process that's efficient to fight the inflammation that's being caused by those heavy metals,
Right.
right? Some kids have underdeveloped neurology. Your brain doesn't fully develop until you're in your late teens.
Yes.
Right? Even the skull is like open at that age. So now, if you take that load of toxin and put it into a child that is neurologically underdeveloped, that genetically does not have the right detox system, that genetically does not have the right methylation system, you're going to cause them neural inflammation, brain damage. And what looks like a thing that we call autism that my child was born with was caused. And it could have been caused by a shot. It could have been caused by chemicals. It could have been caused by the glyphosates on their food. Any one of these inflammatory triggers that they are not equipped to deal with could cause it. And this is why it doesn't happen in every kid, because some kids do have good detox systems. Some kids do have good methylation systems. Some kids, the shot was a problem, but everything else in their life was clean. So the total load wasn't too much. Right. So all of a sudden you can personalize and understand that there is no cause from the drug to this, but there's a cause of the heavy metals and their detox system. There's a reason. And that's why I say that chronic disease is a choice. If you understand why these things happen, and we do understand why, you then make it a choice whether to have them or not. The pace at which you age is also a choice. If we're going to age, we're going to die, right? The pace at which you age, the quality of your life, that is a choice. You can slow aging down or you can speed it up based on your choices. We know why aging happens genetically, and so we can slow that down. Your current experience today, your energy levels, your mood, your sleep quality, your relationships with your family and your kids is all a choice based on how healthy your brain cells are, your body is, your hormones, everything. So if you know that that's all a choice, and this is so important, how important is it to prioritize this for you, your kids, your mother, your everybody, right? My mom was arthritic and in bed. She couldn't get out of bed. She could literally, truly couldn't get out of bed. She now exercises with a personal trainer.
Mashallah. Mashallah.
So it's not only about preventing, it's also reversing. And
Reverse.
first of all, believing it's possible, right? And then knowing why these things. So we stopped treating the arthritis and we asked the question, why did it happen? And when we started dealing with the why, she doesn't even remember anymore that used to be her life, that she used to be in a bed for about a year, I would say.
Kashif, I wanted to wrap up, but I got a question from Ishal. She says, "What if a mother is pregnant and she has to go to emergency in mid-pregnancy and is given painkillers for which she later finds out are just a muscle cramps? Does it affect the unborn child?" I mean, that's a very wide question. I don't know if that's something that you
Yeah,
want
so
to.
in general, so medications affect, so your body uses the glutathione pathway, it's called, to clear a lot of chemicals. And this is why, for example, Tylenol in young children is tied to autism. The Tylenol doesn't cause autism, but your body requires the use of glutathione to get rid of the Tylenol. So it isn't available to get rid of all the other threats, like the chemicals and pesticides and all that. So a child, the total load they can handle is a lot less than an adult. So when you're given painkillers, Tylenol, whatever, yeah, that thing might not be a threat. But if the child is also exposed to chemicals and pesticides and whatever, you're taking away their ability to fight those things. And this is why I believe that Tylenol actually causes autism. Not because it causes it, but because your body is using all your glutathione to deal with the Tylenol. It's no longer there available to fight the other stuff that it needs to fight. And then it causes neural inflammation, right? So it's more of a functional understanding. It's not a direct cause. Same thing with any of these drugs. So all I would say is, first of all, the child is in the womb. So make sure that you don't have heavy metals. Make sure that you aren't surrounding yourself by toxins. Make sure that you aren't breathing chemicals and pesticides and you have nice organic things around you as opposed to chemical and plastic, etc. And reduce the total load.
Yeah, Jazakallah khair. Ishal is a coach as well, mashallah tabarakallah, and I know her on personal scale, and I know her. So, and she's saying my son was later diagnosed with autism. So, yes, alhamdulillah, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless our children with best of health. And heal us. This word that you used, gosh, of choice. I
Yeah.
talk about it and I say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made us, and the biggest superpower that He gave us was the power of choice, the
Yes.
power of choosing. And the waswas, or the overthinking, or the distortion of thought that comes from within ourselves, from shaitan, from whispers, is that you don't have a choice to really believe that this is it, this is how I'm going to live, this is my absolute best that I can give to myself or my children or my family or the ummah, or leave behind me, and khalas, I'm done.
Yeah.
And the people who are able to go beyond this, that no, Allah has given me the choice and I have to find a path. And what you've done is you've given not just your family, yourself, this path, but you've given people like myself, people like Ishal, people everywhere around who are watching, who are seeing, who will be reading this fantastic book, the realization that we have a choice to live a healthier, safer, more productive life, to do the things that we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to do, to be the best of the best, to leave some sort of a goodness in this world. After all, Allah knows we need a lot of goodness in this world. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us. So jazakallahu khair for your time. This book can be bought on Amazon. The DNA company, www.dna.com,
The DNA company. Yeah. The DNAcompany.com. Yeah.
and we can go on there and we can order the test. It comes to our
Yeah.
home and then we send it by mail again.
And you send it back. Yeah, exactly.
And then we can proceed further from there, whatever we need to do. I mean, I'm going to do that, inshallah ta'ala. I'm saying that online. I am, really, because I really feel that that's something that's going to help alleviate my living, my health, and my children's as well. I'm very concerned with the kind of the quality of life our children are going to have, because if now today we are discussing this, that means it's our children deserve a better, healthier life, a less confused life,
Hmm.
a life that has more solutions, a life that has more path to understanding themselves better. So let's do this for ourselves. Let's do this for our children. Let's have happier, healthier homes, inshallah ta'ala. Please, 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 if nothing else today, please get this book. Have this book on your breakfast table, coffee table, home library, school library. Gift it to people. Make book clubs about it. Read this book. I cannot tell you how important it is. Jazakallah khair, Kashif, for this. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you, and all the best with your travels today. Jazakallah khair for coming online today, making time. Thank you so much.
Thank you for putting this together.
Alhamdulillah. Assalamu alaikum, everybody.
Bye,